This is a reading from St. Paul's letter to the Colossians. We have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of His will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to Him, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God. May you be strengthened with all power, according to His glorious might, for all endurance and patience, with joy, giving thanks to the Father, who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of His beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. Jesus was always most angered by hypocrisy. He was angered again and again by the falsity of the Pharisees. You recall at one point he called them whitewashed sepulchres. He said, outside you're all white and without blemish, but inside you're filled, he said, with dead men's bones. A hypocrite is one who pretends to be what they are not. A hypocrite is one who speaks and acts in one way, but inwardly thinks and acts in another. What was the hypocrisy of the Pharisees? What were those dead men's bones that Jesus said were hidden within? They were sins of pride and arrogance, an inner sense of religious entitlement and self-righteousness, while outwardly seeking to project an air of religious piety and virtue. These were the faults against which Christ most vehemently spoke with great force and with righteous anger. Jesus calls His followers to be holy and humble. He calls His followers, His disciples, to be bearers of His divine light and to seek truth that comes from God alone. He calls His disciples to seek justice for everyone, calls them to be bearers of peace. And above all, He calls His disciples to love one another, to love even those who do not love us. In other words, He calls us to love our enemies and to do good to those who hate us. To be a disciple of Christ is to be a student of Christ. We're to learn from Him that we might be modeled after Him, that we might become like unto Him. To be His disciple, His follower, His student, means that We are called to be the same inside as we are outside. To be rid of any falsity that may be lingering somewhere within us. As his disciples, as his students, we have a great advantage. And what is that? Well, it is simply this. We have help to understand and to do what he asks of us. We have help. We have Mary as our mother, our model, our teacher. And her only concern is to help all her children to be all that her Son has called us to be. And she begins by teaching us how to empty ourselves of anything within us that is not of God. Mary teaches us to understand that. She teaches us to understand that which is most pleasing to God, and that is to be rid of all hypocrisy. To be rid of all hypocrisy that may be lingering somewhere within, in the darkness. Mary teaches us to walk in truth, to walk in humility and simplicity of life, to be people of thanksgiving to God. Thanksgiving to God for the abundance of grace that is constantly showered upon us. Mary teaches us how to cooperate most fully with that grace that God gives us, so that we might, in all truth and with no hypocrisy, be bearers of the Christ light, as she was and as she is, and courageously continue to carry his light into this world. Mary leads us to be true children of God by helping us all to admit in all sincerity our sins, our offenses before God. She teaches us how to be children of a deeper faith and of an abiding hope. And she teaches us to grow in the virtues of patience and kindness, compassion, and love for God, for one another, and for ourselves. Mary helps her children to be all that God has created us to be. Mary helps us all to walk in a manner worthy of God. How can we not love her, who loves us with such tenderness and care? How can we not love her whose only desire is that we might spend eternity with her in the radiant presence of God, in the peace and the endless joy of heaven? Our only response can be to reach out in loving embrace and to surrender ourselves to her motherly protection. Our only response is to be ever thankful for the great gift given to us by Jesus, the gift of his own mother, who is now and always will be our mother of perpetual help.